Thank you, guys, and thank you, Social Daze, for a platform where we could be professional and not be boring. Cheers to that.
Cheers.
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 There's a phrase that I use a lot that's keeping it 100. So I often post and say, I'm just going to keep it 100 here. So
that.
right now, what does keeping it 100 mean to you?
Giving everything to the max.
And to you, Willy?
Doing the best you can.
Giving your best all times.
So to me, keeping it 100 is keeping it real, keeping your authentic. And I always want to think that in everything that you do, integrity for me is core of anything that I do. So to me, that's what's keeping it 100. In case you were interested, today we will have a conversation that's not just authentic, but that we hope it educates, inspires, and we're going to talk about topics that we are passionate about and topics of things that we have and we share in common, like what constitutes being creative from an architectural and design standpoint. We're going to discuss strategies that tell a narrative, not only for the brands that sometimes you're requested to architect or design for, but for an entire city. Lastly, we're going to talk about how to create a mood, or like young people say, a vibe. We have purposely and intentionally put different generations together because you all may pursue things very differently. And I think that's a very realistic picture of not only where we work today, but oftentimes we have a home. Like, I mean, my mom never met her mom's grandma. So now we're living in households where there's multi-generational, and we work with people in multi-generational. So with that being said, I have the pleasure to be here with Willy Bermello from partnership with Bermello Ajamil, Pinar Harris, principal of SB Architects, and you may recognize her from Design Miami's cast, Valentina Leon. Mm-hmm. Valentina, you recently started your own practice, though. Congrats.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me.
That's pretty cool. And I understand that you moved to Miami. How old were you?
When I moved to Miami, I was 18 years old. And I started the interior design career. And then I started, when I was studying, I started my internship with Sire Design. Mm-hmm. And I spent 5 years of my life working there. And then we did the show in Netflix, Design in Miami. It was very fun and creative. And then after 5 years, I said, it's time to go to my own.
Good. You took the leap. That's amazing. Mm-hmm. How was Miami when you came here? Like, what was the skyline? Like, what building was there before you moved that we would know that's there now?
For Miami Design District was developing. It was starting. Also, Brickell City Center wasn't there. So after some years later, I started seeing the growing of the design district and the Brickell, how downtown right now is developing and increasing.
Continues to evolve Miami. Mm-hmm. You know that Willy was a part of creating that skyline that we see now also. And has been transforming too. So Willy, I know that you moved to Miami, what, early 70s?
I moved to Miami in 1960.
60, wow.
So it's probably most of the people here were not alive at that time. So it's been quite a number of years. And Miami was a very different town at that time. We're right now in the City Beautiful in Coral Gables. And I recall, for me, Miami was Miami Beach. Let's start with that. Miami really didn't exist when my parents and I came in 1960, October 22nd to be exact. And for us, across the bay was something that we were not aware of. And in fact, at that time, if you took a ride on 8th Street, the Tamiami Trail, past Lejeune Road, you would not see very much. Wow. So it was a very different community, very different town. And really the Cuban migration into Miami was transformative as the railroad was when Henry Flagler brought it in the early 19th century, early 20th century. So Miami has really grown and changed a lot. And we're fortunate to have been part of that transformation with some striking buildings that I think are impactful, that people think about Miami with them in mind when they go different areas. And that's what makes part of the joy of being an architect.
Yes. And not only that, in the city and the port and everything that you and your firm have developed, but I know that you have also played a big part on creating Miami's narrative as a city because you co-founded Calle Ocho, and a lot of people don't know that.
Yes, that was in 1977. My wife and I had just moved from Philadelphia, where I'd gone to Penn for my master's. And in Philadelphia, to celebrate the bicentennial, they closed Ben Franklin Parkway, which, if you haven't been to Philadelphia, but you saw the movie Rocky I, that's where Sylvester Stallone runs up the steps of the museum and puts his head up high. And they had closed that street up for a festival to bring Philadelphia's different ethnic groups together. So in 1976, in Miami, there was a lot of polarization, a lot of issues going on that people today are not aware of. There were car bombings, or a number of things, and the Kiwanis Club was trying to figure out a way as to how do we bring the community together. And different ideas came up: a bicycle, a run, etc. And I came up with the idea of, let's close Calle Ocho, let's do an open house. We called it that first year Calle Ocho Open House 8. And the rest is history. It became the largest Hispanic festival.
Yeah, like we say in Spanish, la pusiste en la luna.
Yeah.
So I want to think, and I ask you because I think we're talking today about experiential marketing and things that people do. We are certainly living in an economy where people want content, they want experiences. And I'm here sitting with someone who created one of the first iconic experiences for our whole entire city. Isn't that great? Cheers to that as well.
We'll drink to that. Cheers.
How do you make a connection when you do something like that? How do you say, I'm going to not just create an experience, but I'm also going to, whether that's a wall like we have here from Bloom Walls that where you want to take a picture, or how do you change in architecture the narrative of how people are not just in this generation, but in the upcoming ones going to flow? Pinar.
How do we change the narrative in architecture? Well, by thinking outside of the box, by being creative, by being pioneers, by thinking what is next instead of what is in front of us, and just leading the charge in the built environment.
Well, you know, studies out lately, I've been listening to this neuroscientist, and he was telling in his podcast that studies do suggest that creativity doesn't just exist in your imagination, but it's certainly impacted by things you saw from childhood all the way until you're 25. So maybe things that you saw in your childhood that were there, and like we were talking about earlier when you're meditating, and sometimes it's what's there, and sometimes you could focus in what you wish was. Which one of those two do you think you employ most when you're designing, when you're looking at a blank canvas? This is something I want to create, or this is something I wish I could remove and recreate?
I think I just think about what I want to create, and we are definitely impacted about our experiences, our past, our history, where we have been, what our own experiences and our built environment. So that's really impacting how we are thinking about the future as well.
Is that something true to you? Like when?
Well, to me, it's, philosophy impacts a lot of, and also your spiritual beings impacts a lot about what you do and how you see the world around you. But Albert Einstein, in the topic of creativity, even though he was not a designer, but he was obviously one of the world's foremost thinkers, said that creativity is the ability to remove all self-imposed constraints. And when you really think about that and you start any kind of design process, you bring a whole set of biases that are back in your mind from all of your early learning, things you've seen, things you've heard, read, that start to create a certain series of fences in your mind that blocks you in a certain way. And I think what he said in that statement many, many years ago is so true.
Accurate.
That once you remove all those fences that take you in a certain way, it gives you a whole set of freedoms. And that's really where you see some outstanding thought come into being.
Correct. So it's just not what you've been exposed to, but what you want to like submerge into, sort of a deal.
By the way, we may need more wine to keep you refilled.
For sure. We'll keep it coming. Keep it coming. Do you find that's true for you, Valentina? Like your childhood and what you saw impacted the way that you design today? Like maybe the textures, different patterns, or maybe you didn't have and you wish you did.
I think for me, it's mostly the past years, including in the COVID moment. There was a time that you cannot go anywhere, so you have to stay in your home. So you started to love your place and started like working there or living with your partner more time and spending more time with them than before. So that makes you like more your place, and that's when it comes the remote working. So you have to. After that, I understood that each part of the house that you are in it is really important, and people started to understand the importance of having an interior that makes you feel more comfortable, more environmental clean and happy, and that's where all the spaces started to be more important. So the clients started to give more importance to the living room, for their offices. Having offices in their houses it wasn't something big, but right now everyone is asking for an office in their houses. So I think with the years, it started to develop more love to the houses and the spaces.
Certainly for your generation, I think. I don't know if for COVID, a lot of people were feeling more emotional. I think we'll see a lot of studies that are being conducted right now on how people transform their homes into what maybe they didn't think it would be. But emotion, for sure, it's something that evokes certain aspects of your design. So do you usually design better things when you're happy?
Of course.
I mean, I wouldn't see. So what kind of things do you do in your personal life to remain in that constant? Like we were talking earlier, like me, I certainly don't, I put a hard end to drama. So I don't pick up my mom's phone call until like after 5 p.m. because she's going to tell me about my abuela, my uncle, and all these people. So what I do is I don't answer her until I know, just because, you know, you guys are in the creative space. I am too, just in a different, you know, I'm doing negotiations and strategies, but there's some creativity that goes into that as well.
Of course.
And I feel that derails my thought. And that being said, I'm just curious, like, what do you do? Because your creativity, people depend on it. You know, we can be architecting things that are not functional or that will collapse.
Yeah. Well, personally, I find avenues that I can expand my energy. You know, I start my day typically with my yoga practice at 5:30. So that is my time when everyone is sleeping in the house, that I just get up, I get myself ready for the day, and then go through the motions of getting ready with my kids, coming to work. I have another 30-minute quick fitness center stop, and then I come to work. And throughout the years, I learned that I should not take on other people's negativity onto myself and make that impact my mood about myself.
We've all been there.
And my work. So I try to remove that from my focus and just try to be present throughout the day with my teams, with my clients, with my consultants, and just try to give my best on everything that's coming onto my.
You ever had a client that like wanted to your best and your best wasn't enough? Like,
All
needed
the
to be
time.
even better.
Oh, we
Does
get
that happen often?
we get criticized
Every
once in a
client is like
while.
I'm describing every client, really?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
No, we have some happy clients. I'm sure Willy has some really happy clients.
But I'll tell you on the topic that you were mentioning, and my wife is here and she can vouch for it. For me, the important thing is, and I'll say something that may be not popular with all particularly the ladies and younger people, but since the technology
okay.
revolution, multitasking across America became kind of a common word. But in my opinion, to be able to do great design, you have to be focused. And my wife will say, I'm talking to you, you're not listening to me. And it's because I'm focused on something. And sometimes I use music to focus, kind of put her, the earphones and be listening as I'm doing some thinking and just concentrating on that one thing. And we were able to do that one thing well, better than anybody else. Then you've done, and you have something really, really special. So that's what I would say is the ability to focus on that moment of creativity without all the noise and all the interference that we go through. And I must tell you that to my right and to my left, you all have a tremendous world that you're living in, that we're living in, with access to information that when I was in my early years, we didn't have any of that. I mean, today at your fingertips. I mean, when I would have to go to a library and go through an index and look for something that was already outdated. Today, you have instant, real, live information changing from all across the world at your fingertips. So I think the youth of today in designing, they have an ability to do very creative things, and technology in terms of representation, of doing 3D, augmented reality, etc., is just immense. None of this existed 15 years ago. I mean, the world is changing at such a rapid pace, and the design, I think, is a beneficiary. There are some downsides, but the pluses are overwhelmingly greater than the downsides.
That brings me to a question for you, especially. When you requested something that will change the skyline, how do you know and how do you ensure that goes beyond your generation, her generation, in the upcoming ones?
Let me address that with one project that we did, which is called the Pearl. And if you're driving to Miami Beach on the MacArthur Causeway, any night of the week, and you look to your right, you're going to see two terminals. We did both of them. One is called the Pearl, which is Norwegian Caribbean Lines, which has almost like a elliptical shape to it. And then next to it is the Crown, which is for Royal Caribbean. So when those two were designed, I mean, we knew we were changing the Miami skyline, at least in the port, forever. I mean, we knew we were doing Miami's version of Sydney Opera House.
Amazing.
So it's, to us, it was a tremendous responsibility, because if you do a project that no one sees, that's in the middle of downtown in a corner and nobody will ever come and see it unless you pinpoint it on a GPS, is one thing. But this is a project that is impossible not to see if you're leaving on a cruise ship, if you're going or coming from Miami Beach to the mainland. So knowing what the site is, the response, and that anything that you can do is going to be an image-setting complement or detriment to the city, goes into your thought process. So the exterior symbolism of the building, how it meets the sky, how it reaches the ground, become very important decisions for the designer. And I think in both, although they're totally different, and some people will say that they fight each other. Yes, they do fight. Each chairman of the board for each of the two companies was trying to outdo the other. But at the end of the day, it's great, and it's one of the symbols of the Miami waterfront that we're very proud of.
100% agree. I feel like when people here are telling a story on their Instagram and they're on a boat riding through, you see the skyline and you see how transformative, you see some of your designs.
Elena, you can't imagine how many friends of mine will shoot me a photo because they were in a boat or they were driving over or because the sunset or whatever. And it's just, I mean, that
It's
gives
incredible.
me,
It's incredible.
it's
That's awesome.
priceless.
Yes, that's an incredible
Feeling.
that, and it's rewarding for you because you design responsibly. But we also got to talk about, like for Valentina, who's younger, and she mentioned she just recently opened her own practice, and her being a female, right? I'm a woman that's a feminist, but I also realize that we need men to be feminist, not more
100%.
women. We need men to support us. But if people like Pinar had not paved the way for someone younger like you, it would be a lot more difficult. So when you were starting, Pinar, was that very difficult for you to be a woman architect?
I mean, in architecture, we really will know that. I mean, I think we have a good, healthy amount of women getting into architecture, but unfortunately, throughout the years, we don't see enough women at top leadership positions, and that's really impacting the bottom line or the ladies coming into the architecture. So more and more as we as women get into those positions, I think we will just make our practice just better and healthier for everybody.
I think everybody has like purpose. And for me as a woman, I feel like as I've aged, now I'm on the fourth floor. Okay. And being the fourth floor has come with certain realizations and a sense of purpose that's different. Because maybe when you're 20, and I'm still hungry for a lot of things, but I feel like I've also achieved certain things. So my responsibility now is for people like her.
Yeah.
For
Your
people who are
focus
younger,
changes. Your focus shifts.
to continue to pave the way. So how do you do that in your personal life, Willy?
So I'll tell you, in our company, our staff is right now is about 160, and approximately 50% are women. We have two partners in the company. One that heads is our CFO, and the other one is our head of development. So I think when the profile of our company, women play a very, very important role. I will tell you this, that over the last 5 years, we have had an internship program with Florida International University. And what we do with them is we, on a pro bono basis, we sponsor one of their design studios. So every week we'll have anywhere from 15 to 18 students at our office working on their studios. And one of the surprising things for me is that overwhelmingly, almost 60 to 70% of all the students today coming out of FIU in architecture are women. So the number of women in the work is increasing.
No, that deserves a toast. Hey,
now, I'll tell you one thing
cheers
that
to
I'm
women
working
in
on, and that I
architecture.
would like to maybe recruit you on. The Dade County School Board, which is one of our clients, but is one of the largest employers in Dade County, they currently have a policy that with respect to Hispanic women, they don't qualify or see Hispanic women as women. So if you're looking for an area to spend your time on, contribute, volunteer, I encourage you to consider joining that fight, because it's the only county agency or municipal agency in all the state of Florida that currently has marginalized, particularly Hispanic women, not Anglo, not African American, but specifically, and that's something that we're looking very seriously into. So even though I'm here, the only minority representing the male sector of our population and the gender, I think our heart is in the right place. Plus, I have a lovely wife of 50 years and
A
a
beautiful
daughter,
daughter.
and actually and 5 granddaughters. So and that I have to respond to, and hopefully they're listening to this podcast.
That's amazing,
Aw.
Willy. And thank you so much for everything that you're doing for them and for women overall. Like I said, that's why we need more men that are responsible, ethical, and that are pro-women, okay? Because we certainly are pro. There's just got to come a time that we don't talk about this topic where it's so normalized
Yeah.
It's
that
not
it's
the
not even a
conversation.
conversation
Yeah.
or a narrative. So, speaking of narratives, how do you define your own narrative when you're designing something? There's got to be things like, for you, have the island projects become your narrative?
I mean, our practice is a very collaborative practice, meaning, I think Willy has, of course, started his own company and he's one of the leaders of our company. My company is the fourth generation of our, practice. So we have a very collaborative environment that everybody is driving ideas from each other, giving their 2 cents, and just making sure that the product we are putting out there is usually not just one man's product, but it's a collaborative process. So my narrative comes from as much as my own experiences and from where I'm coming from with my own background. It's also just hearing with others and working with others. And as Willy was saying in the beginning, it's a collaborative process that we just aim to.
That's the winning strategy, 100%. The winning strategy has to be when you bring others to work with you and you empower them with the right tools. Because in not just in the architecture and design, that goes true and accurate for every industry, where you as an individual couldn't do as great. I had my previous boss, when he hired me, he said, we were talking about culture. I work in manufacturing. So in manufacturing, it's all men dominated. And he said, I was the youngest. I went from working somewhere where I was the oldest, okay, tech. And then I went to work with being the youngest, the oldest, from being the youngest to being the oldest. And let me tell you, he said something that switched my mind. He said, I need you because you're a culture add, not a culture fit. See the difference? You're a culture add. We need women. We need younger people. We need to ensure that we know that we are learning from other aspects. And I think in creativity, that's utterly important. Like, how do you learn from this generation, Willy? Like, do younger people teach you also?
Oh, no, absolutely. Because they have so much information at their fingertips. I'm always listening to them, and we surround ourselves. The majority of our new hires, they're all, in their early 30s and late 20s. And we allow that creativity to flourish in the office. And the narrative is, in fact, as a matter of fact, it's all about the narrative. And anytime you do a design, if you don't have a story to tell, you have a real tough time. And I recall that there was a project we were competing for, and our client, or the client to be, was Disney Corporation, and they had just bought an island out in the Abacos, and they had a design competition, design build, and it wasn't so much the design as the narrative that won it for us. And we didn't reinvent anything. We came up with the idea that this was a castaway island with Robinson Crusoe, and what it would feel if you just arrive in a place that it felt like this was out in the middle of nowhere, where there had been a shipwreck, and you're just going through the process of discovery. And it was that narrative that won it. Every project that is successful has a narrative. The Pearl had a narrative. The Crown had a narrative. So I think that narratives are the theme, the storyline behind the reasons that you act upon in your design and explain it. So you have a project that has no narrative, you have a tough time.
You don't feel it in your heart. Like, you can't.
Oh, no, then it's like without feeling.
Right.
So,
no, nothing could be done.
You get lost.
Do you think good ideas come from the heart or from the...
It's a combination.
For the brain. It's a combination of the two.
Of the two, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's a combination.
Yeah, sure. I mean, a lot of things you're deeply passionate about, and you just elaborate on them. Like, for me, that's true.
Your mind is very deductive. I mean, we're trained in terms of the deductive reasoning, the scientific method. The heart is free-flowing. It's romantic. It goes in different directions. So it has to be a combination of the two. The Beaux-Arts movement was not a deductive reasoning. It talked about splendor, it talked about symmetry and beauty in architecture. Think about it. Before Christ, there was one man, Vitruvius, that defined architecture in his 10 books. It wasn't until the Renaissance when Andrea Palladio defined it in 4 books, right at the height of the Renaissance. Today, You have a zillion people defining architecture every day with different images, with different thoughts, with different philosophies. So, you know, it is definitely a combination of the two aspects. You got to bring them together.
And in your new practice, Valentina, how are you bringing those people together? Like, what are you doing to keep you now that you're more on your own? How do you ensure that now you're in tune with your what makes you creative? Like, how do you take that out of you if you're by yourself now?
Well, it's mostly about the narrative and the concept. And for example, for each client, their residences or their commercial spaces, they're special, and they want to have like a vibe or a concept that brings everything together. So going into researching into new designers, traveling and also like bringing all the minds together in the team brings everything together to make a great concept for the spaces and for the client. At the end, the concept is what brings and elevates everything in the project, and that's what they look for it.
So you, if somebody was to say, okay, what makes this designer special and what makes this your signature, it's how the way that they access your signature style.
I will define my style like lived in. I like to implement in the design something that is not like super modern or super vintage. I like something that is lived in, that the materials are different, the colors are more in the warm side. I also bring in texture like marbles and wood that will bring everything, and also the wallpaper that will have the spaces to be warmth. And at the end, I think a warm space is more important than having a cold space. At the end, you will feel more productive and more happy, and it will elevate your well-being.
So that's how you would define your
Live team.
Okay, perfect. That's amazing. That's amazing. In accessing your inner creative self, is that you're inside of your house too?
Yes, definitely. I think every time that I go everywhere, even I love to go to vintage stores, and those pieces that are unique will make the space different. So that's something that I love to go to even with art or sculptures, to bring those things to the space, and that will make a warmer space.
That's very funny, because I have a daughter your age, and I find that young people like the warmth. I recently moved, right? And built my house. I finally had that privilege of doing that. And man, when we moved, although I buy very little, in my house is my husband who buys a lot. And I created mountains of things that we piled up and threw out, because I've become a minimalist at heart. I have the more I grow, the least I want to be associated with things. So I disposed everything. I only kept what was really significant, and realized, oh, so this is the true meaning of being like a minimalist, having only that which I feel I need. Now, do I need the pictures and the things that are sentimental value? Yes. But everything else went. Now, my daughter, on the other hand, she wanted, like you, she wanted the warmth. She wanted the colors and all that things that gives you a throwback. So what for you growing up, what's like that throwback?
Well, I think growing up, I grew up in a household that my mom was a collector. So as I was seeing that, I knew that when I hit my own place, I was going to go the other direction. So just like you, I'm the minimalist. I don't keep anything extra in the house. And I think as I get older, I realize that I'm needing less and less, not more. So it's just very peaceful. It's a place that just to go and relax visually, spatially, furniture, the surroundings, the art. So it's very just specialized to my own view of world.
And like, would it be hard for someone to design for you? Like, if I'm designing your house, say I'm Valentina.
I mean, being an architect and designer, I think I'm very opinionated. So if Valentina is designing my house, I think she will get a lot of direction from me on what to do.
How about you, Willy? You find yourself like in your generation now, where I've hit the fourth floor. I'm not gonna ask you which one you've hit.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm 72 years old, so minimalism to me is not a new concept, because when we arrived in this country in 1960, I had minimalism for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And, so I was pretty familiar with that, what that was all about. But you know, it's interesting. The pandemic changed really all of our lives, and I had always told my wife that you know, by the time that we're this age, we're going to sell our house in Granada and move into a condo and do what all empty nesters do. But, God had different plans. And as we found a new tack for how to exercise, because we could not go to the gym because everything was closed, we started walking. And we started really meeting our neighbors and seeing the rest of Coral Gables that we had not seen. And I found this lot that I had seen for many years, but all of a sudden I never seen it with those lenses. And I ended up in the summer of 2020, when everybody was kind of wondering what the heck is going to happen. We put a deposit, we closed on it, and we designed a new home that we're enjoying right across from the Biltmore, that I'm enjoying greatly, because I'd always lived in a house that I had renovated, never done from the ground up. And if you go into the house, it is very much.
It's completed.
It's completed. Yeah, we've been living in it since Thanksgiving. And we have a lot of artwork, and the house, my wife says, this is really an art gallery for you. In a way it is, but we're enjoying it. I feel I'm in a resort, and I'm not really in a house anymore.
So how do you design it? I'm very interested in knowing.
I feel like any Friday or Saturday morning, I'm going to, like VRBO, I'm going to get a notice that I got to move out because I'm not really living in my house. So we're really enjoying that part. But yes, it's something that we design.
You do a 1-story or a 2-story?
It's 2 stories only for resale value, but everything that we need, it's on the ground level, except a roof terrace for smoking and cigars and having entertainment that's on a 2nd level above the garage. So it's a fun place. We're enjoying the heck out of it. And
this is your forever home.
Yeah, I think for the time being, someone asked Clint Eastwood, the famous actor, what do you do to stay young? And Clint responded, I stay young by doing things that young people do. So being a contrarian, building a new house at the age of 71, moving in at 72, is not typically what people my age are looking for. They're going in the other direction. So, my wife thinks I'm crazy, but we're having a great time.
I don't think you're crazy. You know what? People are lasting younger. My late mother-in-law, when she reached 70, she would say, if people call her old, she's like, no, because people are lasting till 100 at an easy rate. So I am not old. I could easily live 30 more years. She never considered herself old, including to the fact, true to what you said, that when they invited her from the Clínica de León, she was like, oh no, because se me pega el Alzheimer. So she never stepped foot in any of those clinics. If you went into any party, she wanted to be strictly in the young people table. Okay? Because she knew she was going to keep it 100 with herself and not get old. And that's admirable.
Yeah.
But I don't think that age goes, and we're getting a little bit off the topic of architecture, but I think people are getting to know you more, and I'm sure that the audience would like that. Have you met people who are young, like your age, but they're old? They're old. Like, they approach life in an old way, and then you meet people like you, Willy, who are considered quote unquote older, but
one of my best thermometers of what my real age is the fact that both my son and my daughter love spending time and socializing with us. Typically, people like to whether they're your blood or not, they like to socialize with people they're going to share something and have a fun time with. You don't want to be around someone that thinks totally different and has no conversation and etc. So the fact that we have that kind of bond and relationship to me tells me we're on the right track. My conversation, obviously, with all the younger generations in our office and the FIU students, which I do that because it keeps me young. I keep talking to these kids that are 18, 19, and 20 years old, and I challenge them, and they challenge me, and it's a dynamic process. I enjoy that. That keeps me, mentally, just like I go to the gym to keep me my body. I think the three things are important. We all are three things. We're intellect, we're spirit, and we're body. And you have to take care of all three of them with your nutrition, with what you learn, and what you believe. And it has to be balanced, right? But the aspect of keeping your thought process in what you're thinking and you're saying with the younger generation and how they're reacting and how you impact them. Because like when I talk to the young people in my office, I say, your ideas are extremely creative, which they are, more creative than I was. What a lot of the young people don't go into is what are the consequences of some of these actions? And it's that level of responsibility. That's what I bring into the table. I bring in the level of social responsibility for your actions. Because for every reaction, there is a counter reaction.
Yeah.
I mean, Isaac Newton wasn't incorrect. You do something, you're going to get something back. So it's not just doing something, it's what you're going to get back. And those consequences that in design are incredible. An attorney, an accountant makes a mistake, and it's very invisible. It may end up in a lawsuit, but an architect or designer makes a mistake, and it's there for posterity to see. So the level of responsibility of your actions and the consequences go well beyond you met the program, you met the budget, you got a permit, you didn't have a lawsuit, but at the end you have something that's mediocre, that did not advance your society, had no level of innovation, had no level of sustainability. Well, did you really succeed? Did you really move the needle? And that's what I challenge the young people with, is the consequences of their actions. And they challenge me with a lot of their creative thought that I truly enjoy.
That's awesome. And I love to hear that because it's something that it's often on my mind, especially after we've seen certain things that have been architected in flawed ways. It does come to mind, and especially today where I know myself of students that graduated and it's all online, so it's got to be a red flag here in our heads as older, right? Thinking, wow, like when I'm going to select somebody to do my own house, please, if you tell me 2020 graduate, I'm not going to hire you.
Give them a couple years.
It just kind of scares me. But hearing that somebody that like Willy, right, will mentor them and really challenge that, it's sort of relieving knowing that there are people in older generations who feel that responsibility. And I hope that's true for you too, Pinar.
Definitely. I mean, just to add to what Willy said, I think it's the most frustrating thing for me as an architect, seeing new-built work that is not innovative, clean, taking you forward, but it's basically backwards. And it is against everything that has been happening within our industry. And that's extremely just sad and frustrating. But to answer your question from earlier, there's definitely younger people with older generation mentality, but I don't know if it's the part of their personality or their thinking process, but you just have to keep it up with the times. Otherwise, you're not going to make it.
No, I think it might be in their DNA. I really do think. I think there's a part of personality that people inherit. And then those that, like what we said earlier, you're exposed in your environments. Earlier, we had a girl that stopped by here, and she said she was from Hialeah High. I don't know if she's still here. And I told her fact, in Miami, the single school that puts more students through Ivy League schools, it's Hialeah High. And I don't know if that's because when you come from scarcity, like I did, you have such a fire, it's so much more ingrained for you to want to thrive and go. as opposed to when you are born in privilege. I don't know that because I was not born in privilege.
There's a saying that says that need is the mother of invention, and we do a lot of recruitment at my alma mater, which is the University of Florida in Gainesville, at the University of Miami, where we have collaborated a lot, and they've been a great client of ours, but also at FIU. And today, the majority of the profile of all our employees come from FIU. And when, not to disparage University of Florida or the University of Miami, but the one common denominator with FIU students is hunger. And given 3 students that may be equally talented, what I look is for hunger. I look for the right attitude of someone that will stay overnight, that will do whatever it takes to have that project be a success, and not be thinking about the fact that they have to go and go on a vacation or go to out clubbing at Miami Beach, et cetera, et cetera. So the hunger in the student is something that, and sometimes those students that their parents come more from a blue collar background, that don't drive the Porsche, that don't have the membership in the fancy clubs, have that drive, which is the drive that I had when I was growing up. So we look for that because given everything equal, we all have the same number of hours in the day. And at the end of the day, we're in a very competitive setting. And whoever does the best for the less cost at the fastest rate with the most creativity crosses the finish line. So I look for that hunger where they will do whatever needs to be done.
Driven personalities, which I don't know if, do you see that? Do you see that often in like your age group?
Yes. I see a lot of people, young people, that they go the extra mile just to demonstrate how good they are and how they want to elevate and be someone in the future. And I see people that they don't care, they just go to work. So and like that's everything. The way, exactly. You see the ones that go to work to make it happen and go the extra mile, and you see the people that go only to work.
How do you describe your work ethic?
Going to the extra mile, 100%.
Yeah, that's the only way I believe that if you want to excel, you have to be. Brings me to another topic, because really I grew up in public housing. That's 100% the truth. And when I see people like you all designing and developers who do affordable housing, oftentimes I have to wonder, do they think that this tiny closet is there because there's no clothes to be put there, or these people don't have ambition? You see? So how do you feel about that? Like when I don't know if you are in that space where you are given affordable housing to design or not. And it's not a topic that I even thought that we would talk or touch on, but it kind of bothers me sometimes.
I mean, there's a lot goes into the affordable housing, the requirements of affordable housing, and it's all about formulas. But I agree. I mean, you are creating a space for someone to live in, and it has to be taught through. It has to be lived or experienced through that person's lens and their day-to-day life, and it has to be fitting for the lifestyle that's that those people are really going to be living in that house.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, I have my own opinion, like I said.
Elena, it's all relative. If you lived in El Salvador or Nicaragua and you lived in public housing, your house would be, about 350 square feet, and you would not be having a closet to speak of. When I first lived in Miami, was in North Miami Beach, and my family was sharing an efficiency with another family, and we did not have a room, we did not have a closet. So I look at life from different perspectives. I happen to have served in the Florida Housing Commission, where I was named by Governor Jeb Bush, and it is about formulas. It is about a lottery, and unfortunately, it doesn't have a lot of the frills that you would in the market rate housing. But at least this country and this state has a program that I don't think we go far enough, but I think it provides still a housing stock at an affordable rate, which all has to do with the median income of the area. That in comparison to other countries, particularly a lot of the folks that arrive into our community, is 100 times better. I mean, it's not even in the same stratosphere. So I don't work in that space. Many years ago. So, but I do respect the people that work in the space and what they're trying to do, because it's a very high need, and particularly today, one of the crises that we have in Dade County is in fact affordability. The cost of housing is over the roof.
Yes.
Because the interest rates are like haywire, and we have an economy where 3 banks have failed, and there's a lot of uncertainty. And that uncertainty will have only one impact, which is it will raise interest rates even higher. Higher interest rates, higher housing costs. And the salaries are not increasing at the same rate.
At the same rate.
Of those. So affordability and affordable housing, even though I'm not in that space, so I can't tell you that we do enough to help. The people that do, I applaud them every day. Because the worst thing that could happen in our community
repurposing like the malls. I was in
controls.
Canada not too long ago. Well, a few years ago. I used to work for a Canadian company before Lixo. And I saw that the Canadians were repurposing the malls because retail, the bricks and mortar, unless they're very branded and they have that story that we talked about, are dead, quite honestly. I mean, I used to drive by the Miami-Dade campus in Kendall, and I remember the days where you could see the students going around again and again, no parking. Today, you go through and it's empty. Why? Because the students are requiring exactly what we're talking about off this podcast. We were talking about people not wanting to work in person. So equally, the students want to be remote. So those parking lots are empty. So I think, could we do more? Yes, of course. We could repurpose so many things. That's just me as an outsider viewing what I used to see, which is what we're talking here about. And that's why purposely it's here, different generations of people, because we have different mentalities on how we pursue things. I've certainly enjoyed the conversation and getting to know you more, and talking about how we access our creative geniuses. Not for me, but for you. I love it. And with that, I think I'm just going to ask the last question, which will be, how do you see the rest of the year for you in your design space?
The rest of the year will be very interesting for me, especially in my company, because we are going through a transition year right now. So personally, I'm excited to see what will be at the end of the year and what will my career will be next steps. But creativity, it's always, chasing that next big project, and whatever the projects we land, doing our best and being innovative, creative, and putting the best work out there.
How about for you?
Well, we're looking at 2023 as probably the best year ever for our company. We're hoping to break the ceiling of $50 million in revenue, which will be the first time. And
I think that deserves a last. I'm gonna come party with Willy. He's making the money.
So we hope to get there, and we're on our way. We're really blessed. We have tremendous staff, a great support cast, wonderful clients. We just moved into the Gables last June. We're at the corner of the June and
I did
Postalia.
see. How do you miss it?
Nowhere
to miss the Willy, the Bermello Ajamil sign coming into America.
Yeah, we got naming rights. We lowered our rent. We got free parking, designated parking. I have everybody on one floor. We got 24,000 square feet
I
on the
said,
ground level so I can see
I meant
everybody.
it. I'm coming to visit.
I get, every day I get to see everybody. Before, the IT people were like in a closet. Now I see them every day. I like to walk around and see people and smile and hug. And we're also, by way of a pet-friendly office. We have 7 dogs in our office,
Aw.
including mine. So it's great. It lowers the temperature when people get upset. The little ones, the furry
Go pet
ones,
your dog.
do tell. I have a red standard poodle by the name of Red, very creative. And he goes to the office with me every day. And finally, he's trained, so he's not peeing all over the place. And I'm enjoying it. I love it. It's 5 minutes from my house. And I'm almost living a Latin American life where I can go home and have lunch and take a little siesta and then go back to work.
That's
That's
amazing.
awesome.
It's great.
That's goals.
So the
That's
quality-
straight up
I'll tell you,
goals.
for the quality of life for me, it has really increased like tenfold since we moved back into the Gables, and I'm able to do these things. So I love it. I'm having
So the
time
rest of the year,
time of my life.
it's shining.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a great year.
I declare that.
That's awesome.
How about for you, Valentina?
For me, I'm very excited for this new chapter that I started. I feel very grateful for all the love that I have received and also wonderful clients. And yeah, I'm super excited for all this new year that is starting and can't wait for everything.
Well, good. Well, thank you. Today was very special to have the very first episode with such big names. I kept telling my daughter, how did you do that? And she's like, it was all you. I am lucky and blessed to work closely, although not as close as I probably would like, but closely with you all and being in a collaborative part of what you do. Okay. And I do believe that 2023, we will see a lot more of brands and build outs and everything going more into experiential than ever before. And we would see that carry on through the next generation. Okay. So thank you for coming. Thank you for everyone listening. And we sure hope that you tune in to our second episode where we will be discussing another interesting topic and have another social days.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you for having me. That's great.